Greetings, mighty companions. Anna Kujawa here, and welcome back to Practical and Healing Applications of A Course in Miracles. So what we're going to do to start off our class is we're going to get quiet, make contact with our divine right mind, and ask our divine right mind to guide us as to where we go in A Course in Miracles in this class session, so that Spirit can be in charge of that. So that's what we're going to do for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we will dive right on into whatever Spirit has directed us to. So if you haven't already, go ahead and close your eyes and take a breath. And just breathe. Drawing your awareness inward and upward to that peace, that lasting peace that does dwell within always, that's just waiting for us to come back home to the eternal peace of the present moment, where we are at home, the present moment, where all that we need and want is waiting for us, just waiting for us to come back home to it. And so we breathe and feel the present moment, letting go of everything that happened in the past up until this moment now, and letting go of everything that might happen later in the future, letting that all go, and letting ourselves just relax and rest in this perfect, precious, powerful present moment now. We say to our minds, peace to my mind, let all my thoughts be still. Peace to my mind, let all my thoughts be still. This is our time to tune within, to tune in within to who and what we are on the inside of us, that we might remember who we are as created by love, not what we learned that we are, not what we learned we're supposed to be, but tuning in to who we are and were created to be on the inside of us. Feeling that, breathing into that, who am I now? Only now. And now let's tune our awareness within to our divine right mind. Feeling for it, acknowledging it. We have all been imbued with a divine right mind, whether we know it or not, whether we listen to it or not. In this holy instant, we're tuning into our divine right mind, listening for it, acknowledging it, asking for its guidance, asking for its comfort, asking for its inspiration. And one way we do that is we say, divine right mind within me, decide for my peace and my healing for me. Be you in charge of this time. Speak to me, divine right mind, that I might be healed. Divine right mind, you know exactly what we need to hear. Every single one of us listening now or later, you know each and every one of our calls for help. You know in your loving brilliance exactly what would answer our calls for help, our calls for love, our problems. We trust your brilliance. We trust your love for us. Your love for us is greater than our love for ourselves at this moment. That's why we want you to be in charge. Guide our perception. Correct our perceptual errors. Remind us of who we really are in light and love. And thank you, Spirit. Just breathe. Breathe in this holy instant. Notice how this moment now feels. Beautiful. And then when you're ready, take a deep breath and bring your awareness back to the room, back to your body. Remembering that you can return to this holy instant, this precious, powerful moment, anytime, anywhere, for free. For free. Like, what can you get for free today that offers you more than that?
There's no inflation in heaven?
There's no inflation in heaven. There's no inflation in reality, except for inflation of joy. Yes. In reality, joy only increases. Joy by its nature only increases. So if you're experiencing joy that's not increasing, you might not be experiencing joy. You might be experiencing pain in a pleasurable form. All right. I was happy, but then it ended. That might not have been happiness. That might have been a pleasant form of fear, because real happiness doesn't end. It doesn't, like, oh, I had the joy of God and then I lost it because you know what happened. So, all right. Okay, so I've got the random number generator here, and it is chapter 11, and we're going to be in the blue covered editions today, since that's what most people have. And and then Matt, I see you have it open. Will you look at the table of contents and tell me how many sections there are in chapter 11?
8.
8. All right. So we're going to be in chapter 11. Hi, Carol. Hi, Peter. And that is section 5. So it's chapter 11, section 5. And that is the dynamics of the ego. Dun, dun, dun.
Didn't we cover this pretty recently?
Yes, we did.
Are we back?
Yeah. I have 3 dates on here.
Yes, but
But
not recent, not last
No.
week. We did
Well,
something
you guys
very
did.
similar.
Oh.
We did something very
in chapter
similar.
11, didn't we?
But what's your last date for this?
Well, I have 8/05/19.
Okay.
And then the other ones
Well.
are 06 and 07.
I'm-
You're, Matt,
But
think
I
we've
know
done
that we did something very similar,
in
Matt,
11 though.
where we talked about the dynamics of the ego.
Didn't we do something?
And we must have done it we did it recently.
it was chapter 5:5, the ego's use of guilt.
Thank you. I knew it was very similar. Good catch. All right. So you guys, in the blue covered edition of A Course in Miracles, we are doing chapter 11, section 5, the so-called dynamics of the ego. Notice how dynamics has quotation marks around it. So-called dynamics, So it seems like the ego operates with certain laws and principles, but that is an illusion, because ego's an illusion. All right. Okay, great. So we're talking about the dynamics of the ego, and I also want you to know that in application, when we're talking about the ego, we are talking about your problems. What is responsible for the problems? So you can also put in whatever is your current problem wherever it says ego, and then you'll get a deeper understanding about the nature of this problem. Okay, so you know how our problems are like, this is so mysterious. I don't know where this problem's coming from. I don't know why I have it. I've had it for a while. I don't understand this problem. It's such a mystery. Well, this section is going to help you to understand the real nature of your problem. And it's nothing like what you think it is, because if you understood the nature of this problem, you wouldn't have this problem. So in ending our problems, we want to understand the principles, the nature of the problem as it is. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So the nature of the ego, and also the nature of your problem. So don't forget to apply it very specifically to whatever you're going through, so that we can walk out of here with miracles. Miracles are when you take the ideas and you apply them, use them to what you are currently going through that doesn't feel good. Okay, that's what a miracle is. It's one thing to talk about the principles. Okay, of A Course in Miracles. Is another thing to go, how do I apply that to what I'm going through right now? Okay, so that's what we always want to be using this time for, so that we're using our time well, and so we can walk out of here with a miracle. All right, so it says the dynamics of the ego. No one can escape from illusions or the ego problem unless they look at their problem. Because not looking at the ego, the illusion, the problem is the way that the problems are protected. So how is it that we escape from our problems? We've got to look at them. So Course in Miracles is not a positive thinking thing that just has you going, all is well in my universe, where you don't even acknowledge that you have a problem. Course in Miracles is like, no, we're going to look at them so that you can see that they are an illusion. But it says you don't escape your problems without looking at them. We don't escape from our problems by being in denial and pretending that we feel great. Okay? That's Course in Miracles is about looking at the illusion, because not looking at the problem, not looking at the ego is how the ego is protected. The ego would love it if we never looked at it. The ego would be like, that's great. Don't look at me. Nothing to see here, folks. Moving right along. Okay? The ego doesn't want us to look at it. Okay? So he says, there is no need to shrink from the ego or from illusions or from problems. Why? Because illusions, egos cannot be dangerous. Wow. Isn't that interesting? Problems can't be dangerous. Illusions can't be dangerous. Egos can't be dangerous. So there's no need to shrink from whatever it is you're struggling with right now, whatever it is you're afraid of. There's no need to shrink from it. Like, you know those things where you're like, I don't really want to look at that. I don't really want to look at that. I don't want to look at that. And I don't want to look at that. You know those things? Anybody got those things? Okay. This saying there's no need to shrink from them. We need to look at them if we want to escape from them. They're not dangerous. That's a great affirmation. My problems are not dangerous. I like that because, you know, the things I'm worried about seem real dangerous. You know, especially when I'm like, you know, thinking about the things I fear relative to my daughter. It seems like that's real dangerous, okay? And of course, I would just rather be like, oh, like this. But he's saying that, now I want to escape from that illusion. I want to escape from the fears I have around my child. Okay, well, this is telling me that the only way I'm going to escape from them is if I look at them and don't shrink from them. Okay, and it says, and we are ready to look more closely at our ego's thought system. Or we are ready to look more closely at this problem's thought system. Why? Why are we ready? Because we are together. Because together we have the lamp or the truth that will dispel this problem and its thought system. That's why we're ready to look more closely at it. And we're also ready, since we realize that we don't want this problem. We don't want the ego and all its problems. And since we realize we don't want it, we must be ready. So that's so beautiful. We must be ready because of two things. We're together, and together we have the lamp and the truth to dispel it. It's like we were talking about last week about how much easier it is to read A Course in Miracles and to look at it and to look at the ego together. Remember we were talking about that last week? Okay. He's saying that by yourself you don't really have the lamp or the truth to look at, to dispel the ego and all the ego's problems. Okay? Together we have that light. Okay? Together we have that understanding. Okay? You know, what happens when you're looking at your problems all by yourself, in the dark, in your bed, exactly, with the curtains drawn, you know, and you're looking at your problems like this morning. I woke up at 2:30 in the morning, and and I'm like,
They experience inflation.
Exactly. So, you know, because we've come together because we've come together to hear the truth, now we have the truth and the lamp to dispel our ego and all the ego's problems. And also, since we've realized, I don't want this crap anymore. I don't want this ego manifestation anymore. I don't want the ego anymore. I don't want this ego manifestation anymore. I don't want it. As soon as you realize you don't want it, I do not like the way I feel. I don't like the way I feel. You're ready. Isn't that great? That's why the Course in Miracles says that moment where you reach your pain threshold and you go, there's got to be a better way. I don't like the way this feels. I don't want this. He says, that's your turning point. That's your turning point. Now you're ready. Until that moment, you're not ready because you still are. It still has a purpose this problem still has a purpose that it's serving. But as soon as you go, I don't want it. I don't like it. I don't like the way it feels. You're ready to do what? To look at the ego and all of its problems and also to escape from it. Okay? And how do you escape from your ego problems? You're going to look at them with the truth. It's one thing to look at your problems alone in the dark, you know, looking at them with your fears, with your past. That's, you know, but when you're looking at the problem with others, with the truth, with the light, then you will see that your problem is an illusion. You don't have a problem. So that's the end of your problems when you go, oh, I don't have a problem. Oh, I thought that was a big problem. I thought I had a problem. And I realized, no, I don't have a problem. That was in my best interest. That was helpful. That was useful. And it didn't mean what I thought it meant. It doesn't mean how I was interpreting it. And I don't even have it. I don't have that problem. That's when you escape from your problems. Okay? So right now, the problems that seem real, that we're struggling with, those are the problems that we have not looked upon together yet with the truth. Those are the ones we still have. So how about we do that today, right now? How about that's what we do? Okay. Now, it says, so let us be very calm in doing this. Why? Why can we be very calm in looking at our ego and all of its manifestations? We can be very calm in doing this because we are merely looking honestly for truth. So that's what we're doing, that's the purpose, and that's why we can look upon it very calmly.
And honestly means consistently.
Thank you. And honestly means consistently. Exactly. Hi, Patty. Hi, Irene. Lovely to see you. We are in Chapter 11, Section 5, the so-called Dynamics of the Ego. And we're in the blue covered edition. All right. Okay, great. So it's got us all prepared to look on some crap. It has gotten us prepared to look on stuff that we've been afraid to look at. Okay? Anybody got anything they just like would rather not look? It's got us all ready to look on what we've been too afraid to look at, thinking that it's too dangerous and too frightening to look at. The things that we've been in denial about. All of our problems represent something that we've been in denial of, not wanting to look at. Okay? That's what all of our problems represent. You can take that problem and you could go, okay, what is it that I have not been wanting to look at? I've been too afraid to look at it. I've been pretending is not happening, right? And then wondering why it doesn't go away. That's the way most people handle their problems. They just like don't look and hope it goes away, right? And then we numb ourselves, we distract ourselves, we project it, you know, everything besides you know. And he's saying that you can be very calm in looking at these things that you've not been wanting to look at, because since you've realized you don't want it, and since you've joined with others who are also looking for truth, then
they're not dangerous.
Exactly, it's not dangerous, and so you can be calm. And this is telling us that what you're afraid of is not what you think it is. You know, it's really an illusion that you're mistaking for something real. You know, but you can't see that until you look. You know. So, Course in Miracles is offering us a real problem-solving approach that actually works to actually escape from the conflict. I mean, for real, not just like, you know, ignore it, hope it goes away, and then, oh, I'm not experiencing it anymore, so it's gone, and then it shows up in another form. That's worldly problem-solving approach. Just be in denial about that, and then whoop, it pops up somewhere else. Okay, beautiful. So then it says, so since we're together, and since we're ready, we don't have to be afraid, these so-called dynamics of the ego will be our lesson for a while. Why? Because we must look first at the ego to see beyond the ego. Why? Since you have made the ego real. Okay. Now, the ego, of course, is not real in itself; it's an illusion. But since you made it real, then we got to look at it. You know, so it's not like, well, the ego's not real, so I don't even need to look. Well, the body's not real, and the world's not even real, so I don't need to look at it. I don't need to look at it. I don't need to. He said, yeah, it's not real, but you made it real. You think it's real, and so it's real to you, and so it seems to have real effects for you, and so that's why we got to look at it, not because it is real, but because you made it real in your perception.
It's
Right.
easier to think sometimes that the problem is real. We
Yes.
know that the problem is real.
Exactly.
We can feel it. We can see it.
Yes, exactly. And so, A Course in Miracles is not a path of denial or candy coating or positive affirmations and just saying positive affirmations and carrying a can of mace. You know, A Course in Miracles is where we are going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to look at it and see what's at the bottom of it, what's at the core of it, and as a way to undo it at the core, to pull it up by the roots. Okay? This is not the problem-solving approach that we all learned as kids. This is not the problem-solving approach that the world advocates. So that's probably why it works, because it's not what we learned. It's not what the world teaches. And this is the way to escape any problem, any conflict, any issue. This is the way to do it that truly undoes it and where you feel like you have escaped it. Because notice that I use the word escape. As in the first sentence, escape. It's like, you know, so I like that. Now it says, so we must look at the ego. Why? So that we can see beyond the ego and this problem, but only because we made the ego problem real, and we will then undo the ego error quietly together, and then we will look beyond the ego and this problem to truth. So that's how we escape from our problems. We look right at the ego, we look right at it, and together, and then we look right beyond it to what is the truth. What's the true nature of this problem? What's the true nature of the ego? And what is the truth? Okay? That's how we escape from conflict and problems. All right. Questions or comments? Anybody want any support around, like, yeah, but how do you apply that to fill in the blank? We've been getting some great ones. Greg and I got the other day, like, okay, what about brain cancer? Okay, well, let's just go right to it. You know, no word of difficulty in miracles. Okay, anybody got anything that they need to apply this problem-solving approach to? Okay, anybody got anything going on that you've been afraid to look at? Been just kind of looking away, hoping it would disappear? Thinking that I don't want to look at it, it feels too dangerous? Okay, if you got anything like that, this is for you. All right, and this is how we handle all the problems that that come from the ego. Okay? The ego is the problem generator. That's what it does. It generates problems. That's its purpose. The Course in Miracles says the world was made so you would make mistakes and then feel guilty about them. Wonderful. Well, that's a great purpose for a world. Thanks, ego. Thanks for that manifestation, ego. Shows how you feel about us, children of God. Now, so paragraph 2. So, in other words, what is healing but the removal of all that stands in the way of knowledge? So that's what healing is. I need healing. I need healing. I need healing, which means I need the removal of everything that is standing in the way of me knowing the truth. That's the kind of healing I need. I need healing. I need the removal of everything that's standing in the way of me knowing the truth right now, the truth about myself, the truth about source, the truth about life, the truth about the world. I need a healing. That's what healing is, the removal of what's standing in the way of me knowing the truth. Okay? And the first one, of course, is going to be like, well, I don't want the truth. Okay, great. That's the first thing that needs to be removed for you to know the truth, is the belief that truth is dangerous. And it says, and so how else can one dispel problems except by looking at the problems directly, which means without protecting the problems. So don't be afraid to look directly at your ego and the problems the ego has manifested. Don't be afraid to look directly at them. Why? Because what you will be looking at is the source of fear. And you are beginning to learn that fear is not real. Okay. So it's saying you don't need to be afraid to look directly at your problems and the ego, because all you're going to be looking at is fear. That's all it is. This problem, it seems so dangerous and seems so ugly and I don't want to look at it. All you're looking at is fear. That's all it is. Just fear. It's not the devil. It's not a demon. It's just fear. It's not failure. It's not a curse. It's just fear. And we're learning here in A Course in Miracles that fear isn't real. Whew. Yeah, we're learning. We have not learned that yet, that's for sure. The fear is not real. Where else do you hear that? Anywhere else?
No.
Anywhere else that you can say that teaches that fear is not real?
No.
Wow. Right, fear is an illusion. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Fear, false evidence appearing real. Okay. Wow, so don't be afraid to look at what you're afraid of. Don't be afraid to look at what you're feeling guilty and ashamed of. Don't be afraid to look at what you're afraid might happen. You know, my ego all the time shows me things of what could happen to Arya or to Greg, it's like, and it's scary. It looks really dangerous. It looks really scary, right? And so, and this is telling me, stop looking away. Stop like, oh God, oh, go away thought. Ooh, go away thought. That is really ugly and really scary. Gee, let me go distract myself. Let me go distract myself. Let me go numb myself. Or let me go try to control the universe. You know? And it's saying that that's not helping you, Anna. Look straight at it. So whatever my ego is showing me that looks dangerous and scary, look right at it and go, that is just fear. And I'm learning that fear isn't real. Let's take a breath on that one, shall we? Wow. Bridget, we are chapter 11, section 5, the dynamics of the ego. Bridget says, in the Bible, many times it says, fear not, but we don't believe it, LOL. That's right. Yeah. A Course in Miracles also says, there is nothing to fear. It was a workbook lesson. And that's the hardest one to believe of all. That's the hardest one to believe of all. There's nothing to fear. Come on. I mean, have you seen the news today? Have you seen on the news the millions of ways that you could die before tomorrow? you know. So we definitely don't believe that fear isn't real, but we are learning. We study A Course in Miracles, which is telling us that. And the reason it's saying that fear is not real is because what you're fearing is a misperception. It's an incorrect perception. When you're fearing something, you're not seeing the truth of the matter. You're not seeing what's the truth of the matter, of you, the universe, source, love, yourself. You're not seeing the truth of yourself. You're not knowing the truth. If we knew the truth, if we had knowledge of the truth, then we could not be afraid. And so the answer, the true answer, and the way to escape anything that we're afraid of is the truth. Knowing the truth. Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Because when you know the truth, you know nothing can hurt you. You know nothing can hurt a child of God. When you know the truth, you know that a child of God cannot be killed or rejected or condemned. When you know the truth, then you are not afraid. You couldn't be afraid if you know the truth. And so that's why any problem or any fear is a manifestation of my denial of the truth. You know, I'm afraid of this. I'm struggling with this. I'm afraid of this because I don't know the truth. And so I'm tired of this pain. I'm tired of it. I don't want this pain anymore. I don't want this struggle anymore. I don't want it anymore. It hurts. Okay? So I want to know the truth. I want to know the truth about myself. I want to know the truth about my child. I want to know the truth about life. I want to know the truth about, you know, everything. I want to know, I need to know the truth. Like the Course in Miracles workbook says, I am in need of nothing but the truth. Because once I know the truth, I cannot be afraid. I cannot suffer once I know the truth. Once I know the truth that I am not a body and I cannot die. And that my child's not a body and my child cannot die. Once I know the truth, I have escaped fear. There's fear and there's truth. And they cannot both exist in the same place at once. So, where truth comes, fear goes. Where fear comes, truth is hidden from you. Wow. Okay, that's pretty simple, huh? Okay, it says, you are also learning that fear's effects can be dispelled merely by denying their reality. Okay, I love that. So, not only are we learning fear isn't real, but all those effects of fear, all of our problems, all of our issues, all of our problems, those are the effects of fear. And this just said that all the effects of our fears can be dispelled by denying that they are real. Wow. Does anybody have any effects of fear that they'd love to write about now to dispel? Yeah, I got some fear effects going on in my world, that the effects of fear that I would love to be dispelled. You know, I got some effects of fear that take the form of war. I got fear effects that take the form of economic distress, and on and on and on. And I would like for them to be dispelled. It says, you are also learning that fear's effects can be dispelled merely by denying their reality. Okay, this is fear, and fear isn't real. This came from fear, and fear isn't real, and so that isn't either. You know, only all power is of God. What didn't come from God has no power to do anything. That's how you dispel the effects of fear. Okay, now you see why the Course in Miracles calls us miracle workers. Because if you can dispel the effects of fear, then what are you? You're a miracle worker. That's what miracle workers do. They dispel the effects of fear by denying fear's reality. Wow, very empowering.
So
Now-
how do we do that?
Yes, by affirming, by asking for the truth in place of the fear. What is the truth? What is the truth about me right here? What is the truth about this situation? So, desiring the truth in that moment is how we do that. We go, I ask for the truth, and also, and we affirm the truth that fear isn't real. So asking for the truth, affirming the truth without being in denial about that we have made the problem real. So truth, like it said, knowledge, truth, knowledge of the truth. So when I desire knowledge of the truth in place of my fear, fear is dispelled, and so is all the effects of my fear. So it's all in what we're asking for and our desire. What am I desiring right now? Do I want the fear or do I want the truth? Do I want the problem or do I want the truth? So that's how we do that. And a million other ways the Course gives. Okay. He says, now, the next obvious step, and the next step is obviously to recognize that what has no effects, like fear, doesn't exist. So if I just dispelled the effects of the fear, then obviously fear doesn't exist. That's because laws do not operate in a vacuum, which means what leads to nothing has not happened. And if reality is recognized by reality's extension, what leads to nothing could not be real. So do not be afraid then to look upon fear. Why? Because fear cannot be seen. Why is that? That's because clarity undoes confusion by definition, which means to look upon darkness through light must dispel it. Interesting. Don't be afraid to look upon darkness, because when you look upon the darkness, it disappears. Where's that darkness? Where's that darkness? I want to see that darkness that I've been living in fear of. No. It's like, in dreams when you're like running from the monster in the dream, like, the monster, you're like, there's a monster behind me, and you're running. And then if you perchance to stop and turn around and look at the monster in the dream, what happens? The monster disappears. So it's saying, don't be afraid to look upon the darkness. Don't be afraid to look upon what you're afraid of, because when you look at it with the desire for truth, you're looking upon the darkness with the light. And just the looking on it with the desire for truth dispels the darkness, dispels the fear, and all of its effects. Wow. Powerful. Okay, so let's take a breath. Hi, Jen says you're speaking directly to me tonight. Beautiful, Jen. I'm very happy to hear that. I'm glad to have you in this healing circle, Jen. You're entitled to miracles. And hi, Demi. Lovely to see you too. Okay. Any questions or comments so far on those first two paragraphs that we totally and completely don't believe?
Thanks for bringing it.
Yes.
So it's just basically saying, look at it, look at your problem, because in your mind it exists.
Yes.
But it really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fear,
Yes.
which doesn't exist.
Right. But you don't know that.
But you don't know
till you look
so
at it.
It's like, so look at this, and
Yes.
that's not real. So, and then look at that, and that's
Yeah.
not real. And now look at the effects of that thing that's not real.
Exactly. And realize that how can
None of this is
what has
real.
no effects be, yeah, right. Exactly. But you don't know that till you look
Take a look at it.
with the desire for truth in your heart.
Important.
And that's
point.
an important piece. If I'm gonna look at it to see, how effed up I am or how somebody hurt me, then that's not looking at it. Okay. What he's saying that to look on it means to look on it and go, that is fear. This is fear. And fear takes, a myriad of forms. Why? To hide what it is. It takes the form of cancer to hide that it's just fear. Now it takes the form of a car wreck to hide that it's just fear. And now it takes the form of death. What? To hide that it's just fear. It's just fear. And just because it takes a form that looks so scary and dangerous doesn't mean that it's anything but fear. It's just fear. And when you look upon it and you go, that's fear, that's just fear, and fear is not real, then it doesn't matter what you're looking at, cancer or a canker sore. It's dispelled. You escape from it. It's dispelled. And I love that. It literally said the word dispelled. Like you were under a spell. You're under a spell of fear, thinking, whoa, this isn't just fear. This is real. This ain't just fear. This is a big problem. Right.
The object of fear is just to create more fear.
Exactly. And the object of fear with the ego is to stay hidden. The ego's purpose is for you to be afraid and that the fear be cloaked. The ego's always cloaking the fear so that it looks like it doesn't look like just a thought. It doesn't look like just fear. It looks like something more than that.
That's why the Grim Reaper wears a cloak, so he looks more scary.
Exactly. That's why the Grim Reaper wears a cloak. Exactly. And then you take off the cloak of the Grim Reaper, and it's just like, oh, dude. It's like the little midget, who's this tall. Fear me. And you're like, I'll fear you. Right? Exactly. That's why the Grim Reaper wears a cloak. Very good. Okay. But when we look upon it, instead of turning our head and we look on it and we go, that's just fear. What we're doing is we're looking upon it with the light of truth, and then it just is dispelled. Oh, confirmation. Mm-hmm. All right. Beautiful. So powerful. So whatever it is right now that seems dangerous and frightening and where you're afraid to look at it, whatever that is, just look straight at it and say to yourself, this is just fear, and I'm learning that fear isn't real. This is just fear. That's all it is, and fear isn't real. And so, and all the effects of this fear are also not real, even if I don't believe it. Okay, you're still looking upon it with the truth, even if you don't 100% believe that, which means you're still dispelling the fear and the form of the fear and the effects of the fear just by your knowing the truth, just by your looking on it with the truth.
So I'm hearing or interpreting that this is in some ways a fake it till you make it sort of thing, because I really don't believe it. I really don't believe what what the book is telling me here. But my willingness to entertain the idea that the fear and the effects that I think I'm seeing is not real is the essential difference. My willingness to be open to hearing the truth and not indulging in my own analysis of how screwed up I am about X, Y, Z.
Exactly. So, because it's true that when I look upon the ego manifestation and with the truth in my mind, even if I don't fully believe it, because it's true, it still works. And so, yes, and so it is a fake it till you make it kind of thing. So, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Matt. This feels like fake it till you make
Yeah.
it. But fear comes from guilt, and guilt comes from the belief in sin. And so maybe I'm just running to the cliff notes here, but all of these problems, the truth, as we're talking about it, is defined, as I understand it, as we're projecting all of our guilt out there, which creates all of our problems.
And that's why fear is an illusion. It's a projection.
It's a
not.
complete
It's a
projection.
projection. It's
And
not
it says
true.
the only problem
And
that
it's
we
not
have
true.
is we feel we're separate from God.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
So it's a big circle.
And if we knew the truth, that we were not separate from our source, there'd be no fear.
Yeah.
There'd be no guilt. There'd be no problems. Yeah.
So, yeah, so this is a lot of words just to boil it down to. That's the truth.
Yeah.
If we're going to practical applications of it, we have to be willing to look at how we're projecting our guilt.
Exactly. And that's exactly right. So
And that's what's hard.
even though it's a projection and it's an illusion and not real, we have to look at it because we've made it real. How do we know we've made it real? We're suffering. The Course in Miracles says, if pain seems real in the perception, you know you have made the ego real. You made the problem real. If you're experiencing pain and pain seems real in your perception, that's how you know.
And then when we project, we create more.
That's
guilt,
right.
more
That's how you
fear,
know
more-
that you don't know the truth yet. So we look at it with the intent and the desire for truth. What's the truth? What's the truth here? Am I a guilty sinner? Do I deserve to be punished like this forever? Is that true? What is the truth? You know, do I need to live in fear for the rest of my life? Is that true? You know, and when we look at it with the desire for truth, then literally we're looking upon it with a light that automatically dispels it. And the truth will always tell us that this is just fear. That's what truth always says. This is just fear, and fear isn't real. You know, and it just seems too simple and too easy to be true. It just seemed that's what it was like. Oh, it just can't be that simple and easy. That's our challenge here.
It isn't.
I know.
It isn't easy.
Yes, I know exactly. But it is simple. It is simple. You know what the truth is saying is so simple. This is just fear, and fear isn't real. Poof.
Well,
Yeah,
what's
but-
not easy is that it's not easy to accept.
Exactly.
It's to
It's
remember
not
it.
easy
Accept.
because we
Don't
don't
want to
accept
accept
it. That's what's not easy.
Because there's some kind of payoff.
Yes, because there's some kind of payoff still in the fear and its effects. And so when I still got a payoff in the fear and the fear's manifestations, then I'm like, oh, this is big. This is impossible. This isn't just fear. This is something else. This is too impossible. This is big. You know, but when I'm like we were saying earlier, I've had it. There's got to be a better way. I don't like the way this feels. Now there's no more payoff in it. Now you're pulling the payoff rug right out from under it. You know, so when there's a payoff, you're not willing to look at it through the eyes of truth and go, what is the truth here? You know, you just want it. When there's a payoff that you're still getting from it, you're still going to be deceived by the form that fear comes in, and you won't realize it's just fear.
But to go back to the payoff thing, I never seem to know what my payoff it is.
Mhm.
If I'm going through something and I continue to go through it, you know, I've studied enough where it says, well, there's got to be some kind of payoff that you're
Right.
digging for, and
Right.
sometimes I just don't know what the payoff is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I understand that. It's harder for me to find my own payoffs than it is to recognize the payoff in somebody else. But it's some of the payoffs that I've seen are I get to continue being a victim. I get to project anger
Yep.
because I get some rush out of it. There's some pain. There's some, but I get to blame somebody else for this.
Yeah,
I get
got to
to
be a
not.
victim.
I get to not take ownership of this.
Yeah, so many. Yes, exactly. So beautiful. That's the best question. Now you're on the right track. What is the payoff? Wait, I only have this problem because there's a payoff in it for me? You mean this isn't just happening to me? I mean, I chose this, I attracted this because there's a payoff in suffering to me? It seems so crazy. We're afraid to acknowledge that we're that powerful, because if we have manifested this problem and this struggle, that would have to mean that there's a part of us that is insane and is punishing ourselves and attracting punishment to us. Okay, and so, but we don't want to acknowledge that we're insane like that. But we are that insane. And until you look at that insanity, the insanity where I feel guilty and I want to punish myself, until you look at your insanity where you want a punishment and suffering, until you look at it and call it what it is, fear, then you will continue to have a life where bad things seem to happen to you again. So that's one of the forms of fear that we're looking at today. And we're going to look at it without fear, because we're together. And together we have the light, which means the truth that dispels it. When we look at that desire to suffer, that desire to be punished, and we look at it and go, that is fear, and fear is not real, it is dispelled. So that pattern that has dogged us for our whole life is gone. Like, where'd it go? Okay. So thank you for bringing that up, both of you. And so, we are in chapter 11, section 5, the dynamics of the ego. So we're talking about the ego, and all the ego's manifestations, how the ego works, what the ego is, and how to dispel the ego and all its effects. Okay? And the effects of the ego are all the problems that we experience. So thank you. Han Shu says, psycho. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. And that's just fear. That's just fear. And fear isn't real. Beautiful. So let's take a breath. Beautiful. Thank you, Bridget, for answering that question. To type in here. Oh, thank you, Bridget. You did it before I even asked. Okay. And hold on, Greg. Would you be willing to text Aria and see if everything's okay? She's just calling. Okay. Speaking of. Speaking of.
She's okay.
Yes. That's So, and that is just fear. And fear is not real. Exactly.
But call her anyway.
But
Call her anyway.
But call her anyway, honey. Yes. Let me tell you something. If I was to really allow myself to do this to all the fears that I have around my daughter, I would be, really setting myself free in a way that I have tried to imprison myself, for 18 years now. And so I dedicate this tonight to all the fears that I have around my daughter that seem so real, that seem so dangerous, that I'm afraid to look at. And because I don't look at it, it seems so real. It doesn't just look like fear. It doesn't seem like fear that's just not real. So I dedicate this tonight to doing that. And because we're together, then we have the light that can dispel that fear that I have and all of its effects. Whew. That's what I need tonight. Okay, there's my application tonight. Beautiful. Okay, you guys ready to go on to paragraph 3? We're just cooking with grease here. All right. So, let us begin this lesson in, quote, ego dynamics by understanding that the term ego dynamics doesn't mean anything. And the reason that the term ego dynamics doesn't mean anything is because the term ego dynamics contains the very contradiction in terms that makes this term meaningless. How is that? Dynamics implies the power to do something. And the whole ego separation lies in the belief that the ego has the power to do anything. Okay, I got a ego lie going on, and my ego lie is that my ego has the power to do anything. And our ego is fearful to us because we believe that the ego has the power to do anything. It says, yet the truth is very simple. What's the truth here? Okay, I'm afraid of the ego because I believe the ego has the power to do something to my daughter. Right? And then, but the truth that he said that's a lie. He said that's a fallacy. He said that's a lie. I believe that my ego has the power to do something to my daughter. You know, that's dangerous, that's hurtful. And he said that's a lie. That's a fallacy. And the truth is, all power is of God or love. That means what is not of God and love has no power to do anything. Whew. Okie dokie. So that is the truth of the matter. Remember what we said about the truth: when you look upon the fear with and see it as it is with the truth, then it is dispelled. So what would dispel all my fear about what the ego has the power to do to my daughter or to me or whatever, and I remember all power is of God, what isn't of God or love has no power to do anything. Now all my fear around what the ego would do to my daughter is dispelled. Okay. So the truth that I want to remember is that the ego can't do anything to my daughter. It can't do anything at all. Much less hurt or kill or maim or whatever. And so if I realize the ego has no power to do anything, then I'm not going to be afraid all the time. I'm not going to be afraid. It's the same as saying this is just fear and fear isn't real. The only thing that has any power to do anything is God, which is love. And so there ain't nothing to fear. You know, I don't have to worry about something bad happening to her, you know, in that regard. Because the ego has no power to do anything. Ego doesn't give life, and ego doesn't take life. You know, ego doesn't give life, ego doesn't take life. Ego doesn't give birth, ego doesn't kill. Wow. And so it is nothing. Only what God does has any power. Wow. Okay. Bridget says, she is growing up and it is hard to let go. Thank you. That is very true. Just being a mom. When I feel fear about my daughter, I just say a prayer for her safety. Trust in God. Beautiful. Thank you, Bridget. Help me remember. God has all power. It's like, that's why A Course in Miracles is telling us on every other page over and over and over, you are not a body. Say you are not a body. Say I am not a body, I am free. Say I am not a body, I am free. Because when you remember that we are not a body, then it's easier to remember, oh yeah, God didn't create death, which means there ain't no death. And yes, the body dies, but that's not who we are. That's not who we are. That's not who I am. That's not who my kid is. You know, all power is of God. What is not of God has no power to do anything. What is not of God is death. And so death has no power to do anything. Death has no power to do anything. Hallelujah. That's what I want to accept. That's the truth that I want to bring and to look upon my fears with, to dispel them. Wow. So, I want you to say this to whatever problems you got going on right now. Because whatever problems you have going on right now, we're afraid of them, we're upset about them because we believe they have power to do something. If you knew that your problem right now didn't have the power to do anything because it didn't come from God, then you wouldn't be worried or upset about the problem. You'd be, I don't have a problem. I'm worried about this. I'm upset about this. I'm struggling with this because I think this problem has power to do something to me or someone I love. I believe this problem has power over me. And that's why I'm afraid of it. That's why I'm upset about it. That's why I'm suffering with it. That's why I'm struggling with it. And so we want to remind ourselves of the truth. This problem has no power to do anything because this problem didn't come from God. And so this problem has no power to do anything. Well, if this problem doesn't have any power to do anything, well then why am I so upset about it? It's not a problem. This truth transforms problems into nothing. Except joy. It literally, like it said, dispels them. Like, poof, dispels them. This truth dispels them. Wow. I wonder why we don't use this truth more often. If it can do all that, how come we don't use it more often? How come we don't memorize it?
We're just not used to it.
Yeah, exactly. And like there's still some payoff in the problem.
True, yeah.
There's still some payoff in the problem. Now that's taking radical responsibility. Why don't I memorize this and then use it more often? Because I still got a payoff in the problem. Still got a payoff. You know, under the table payoff. Wow, beautiful. Yes, exactly. Bridget says the problem. Hanshu says, Anna, where's your God? Where is my God? Everywhere. Everywhere. Okay. And the Course in Miracles says, we are in God. We are in God. And God is within us. God's everywhere. Everywhere you are. And then Bridget says, the problem fades away when you realize God has all power and God is large and in charge. Amen to that. Okay. Now, paragraph 4. So, when we look at the ego or this problem, then we are not considering dynamics, but delusions. And you can surely regard a delusional system without fear, right? Because a delusional system cannot have any effects if the delusional system source is not real. See, fear becomes more obviously inappropriate if you recognize the ego's goal. What is the ego's goal? It's so clearly senseless that any effort on the ego's behalf is necessarily expended on nothing. And what is the ego's goal? The ego's goal is quite explicitly ego autonomy. That's what the ego's all about. You know, I am God. The ego's like, I'm God. Fear me. Worship me. That's the ego's goal, that the ego would be God and on its own. From the beginning, then, the ego's purpose is to be separate, sufficient unto itself, and independent of any power except its own. And this is why the ego is the symbol of separation. Wow. And then when you realize what the ego's up to, then you realize that anything the ego says or does, and any effort expended on the ego's behalf is literally a waste of time and energy. That's effort expended on nothing. When you know what the ego's up to, when you know the ego's one goal. So, okay, well, I know this is ego because it hurts and it's frightening. Okay, great. Well, once you recognize what your ego's up to in this problem, what your ego's trying to accomplish in this problem, what's the ego trying to accomplish in this problem? What's the ego's end game here?
For you to suffer all
with
the
this
time.
Exactly.
Suffer, suffer,
Is
suffer,
that
suffer,
you
suffer,
suffer all the time, and then think that it's happening to you from God, so that you'll fear God and worship the ego as God. So the ego is all about that, that you think the ego is God. Wow. And so when you realize what the ego's goal is, what the ego's end game is that you just be afraid all the time and that you worship fear as God, then you're like, that's ridiculous. That's a total waste of energy. Like, whatever. And now you stop wasting your very precious time. Time isn't real. But while you're here, why waste it on nothing? So I love it. It says once you realize the ego's goal is clearly senseless, then you realize, I am not going to waste any more time and effort on defending it, trying to understand it, projecting it, hiding it, denying it, projecting it, analyzing it. Waste of time. That's just the ego. The ego's always up to no good, is not real, and what the ego's trying to accomplish will never happen. What the ego's going for in this problem will never happen. So what a waste. What a waste. So I'm not going to waste my time on it. Not one more second when I could be loving and I could be creating and having a good time and I could be creating the good, the beautiful, and the holy instead of like fighting with the ego and analyzing the ego or trying to deny and hide the ego. Trying to overcome the ego. That's total waste. When really all I need to do is remember the truth, ask for the truth, and the truth will dispel it. Poof, gone. And now I can be about my go along my happy way, creating the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Beautiful. Wonderful. Questions or comments? Yes.
Well, there's another aspect that you touched on briefly last week about the ego being a parasite. So there's a whole nother dimension to this that we could marshal to our own benefit if we can recognize that the ego is trying to enslave us. Mm-hmm. That the ego is feeding off of us. Mm-hmm. And do I really want to continue to be a slave and a host to a parasite that is living off my belief in it, my belief in sin and guilt and fear?
Yes, exactly. The ego is a parasite that lives off fear, literally. And so that's the right question to ask, not where did this problem come from and how do you know, and who's to blame. It's just, do I want to let the ego parasite live off of my fear? Do I want to be the host to the parasite that can't live without fear? The ego can't live without fear. The ego is literally a fearful thought. That's exactly right. As soon as you ask that question, you're like, right, then you won't waste any more effort on the ego and its story and its game and its delusion. You'll be like, never mind. Yeah, to me that's the image I use. Like, I'm not gonna let my ego parasite feed off of me today. I'm not gonna be ego food today. Sorry, not gonna do it. Beautiful. And then Han Shu says, I said, what is your God? Gotcha. And the Course in Miracles Course in Miracles says that God is love. God is only love. The ego is only fear, and God is love. Unlimited love. You know, the mind of unlimited love. That's what God is. Okay, beautiful. So, how are we doing on time? All right. Wow. All right, well then I will just, let's see. I think I'll just stop here. So I think that kind of encapsulates a good portion of this section. And so if you feel so motivated, go read the rest of it so that you can take your power back. Just go, take your power back from that parasite called the ego that's been using you, living off of your fear because it wants to be God. Okay, I love it. So we totally heard how to dispel the ego and all of the effects of the ego, and it just couldn't have been any more simple. It couldn't have been any more easy than what we heard. Wow, it's basically just a recognition of the truth. It's knowledge. Knowledge of the truth is what dispels the ego, fear, and all of its effects. And what's the truth that we were told to? What's the truth? That is knowledge that dispels the ego and enables us to take our power back. It's the first one was, this is fear, and fear isn't real. Okay? And the second one was, all power is of God, and if this didn't come from God, it don't have any power to do anything. So I don't need to be afraid of it. Even unto death. Even death is not from God and has no power to do anything. Whew. What happens if you say that to death? You know, what happens when I say that to my fear of death? Okay? So those are the two truths that we heard, that when you call upon and you look upon the fear with that truth, the truth is dispelled. Beautiful. All right.
It's like my friend in Africa, he said that this voodoo person put a spell on him, and he goes, and threw rice at him and said, I don't care about your stupid spell. And just walked away.
I love that. You know, yes, yeah, that's Jerry was talking about somebody who's in Africa putting a spell on them with rice, and then that person said, I don't care about your stupid spell. Exactly. What is not of love has no power to do anything. And this is not from love, obviously, you know, because love doesn't ever give you something that hurts. Love doesn't give you problems. Love doesn't give you pain. Love doesn't give you limits. So anything that hurts or is a limit, it frightens you, it did not come from love. It came from the ego who's trying to be, I'm God, fear me, I'm God, fear me. It came from the ego. And if the ego is nothing but a delusional thought system, how much power can it have? But you don't know that till you look at it. While you're still like, oh, I'm hiding it, running from it, denying it, hiding it, secret. While you're not looking at it, it seems real, and the fear gets bigger. Okay, beautiful. Any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments?
Well, I read to chapter 12 to amuse myself, and it sounds like part of this, where it's going, is that fear is a representation of a will independent of God's will, as if another will could be made other than God's. So when we look at the fear, one of the things we could say to ourselves is, this is a symbol of me believing that a will independent of God's will can be created.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what's the agenda behind that will is that I can be separated from God.
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And in paragraph 7, sentence 6, I love it. it points out that the ego knows its goal, and it is much more vigilant about its goal than we are. And its goal is to establish that there can be a will, outside of God's will, which of course is impossible.
Right.
And that's what the fear is all about, is to try to make it look real that there can be a will outside of God's will. So when we look at it, like Ari or whatever, going, this is trying to demonstrate that there's a will outside of God's will, because the bottom line is I really want to be proving that I can be separate from God, because that's my goal, lined up with the ego. I don't know if that makes sense.
Beautiful, absolutely.
Another
Beautiful.
repetition in the Course in Miracles. There is no will but God. And it just
Exactly.
goes on. I mean, there's just
That's
a
right.
constant repetition.
Right.
It's amazing to come to a group and recognize how much I remember by listening to all the things. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yes.
It's so cool.
Together, we remember the truth. We have the truth. We remember the truth that dispels the ego and all of its effects. It's easier to remember together. Right.
I think too, I know someone else in here has gone through the same thing I did with my son. And I think that you have to, I had all those fears of, what? He just taken from me, just like out of the sky, pretty much. And I had to think, as I went along with it, I went, no blame, no loss of faith. I cannot, give up my love.
You can't lose.
No,
your
but it
love.
was really hard.
Of course.
Because you miss the person so much, and you don't know what, you think you did something maybe,
Yes.
but you didn't.
Right.
And so you just keep that faith, and the Course has helped a lot all along with that, and even before.
Yes.
But
Yes.
people say, well, why do you still believe in? They want to. Why do you believe in God? Look what God did. Well, He didn't do it. I never believed in that.
Yes. Thank God.
But you try and I don't know. Maybe Greg can relate with me too. It's just really hard to. But you get through it, and you know that there is something more, and you just keep believing.
Exactly.
You don't let the ego come in and twist it. And people will try to be like the person that's the ego and twist it for you. They'll say, well,
Absolutely.
aren't you blaming the pilots? Aren't you? No, I am not. It was not something that could have, when it was, I still love God, I believe in Him. But it is a hard thing, as I'm listening to you, to think about the fear and
Yes.
all the times Annie went out, we worried about him in New York, we worried about all this crazy stuff a kid will do.
Yes. That's right.
Gone. But an airplane crash. But the thing is, you just go, well, we did everything as parents, we did everything, we love the person, you just keep loving him like you're doing with Aria, no matter what.
Exactly. And the love that remains is the proof that death has no power to do anything.
Right.
Because death did not come from God. And the proof that it didn't have any power to do anything is that loving connection still remains. It did not take the love away, the life away, the connection away. It didn't, and it doesn't. It doesn't. And so that remaining connection and love is the proof that death has no power to do anything. It doesn't take life away. Death didn't give life. Death doesn't take life.
It happens to a lot of other people in other ways. It's just not a child. It can be
exactly
all those close relationships.
Absolutely.
But you have to go, well,
absolutely.
It's not. It's.
And the truth is that we're not our bodies, and because we're not our bodies, we don't die.
And
that's what we're learning. And when I learned that death has no power to do anything, then I will be free of my fear of death.
Right.
I'm so afraid of death because I haven't accepted yet. I don't believe yet that death, which didn't come from God, has no power to do anything. but that's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
And every little bit that I practice brings me closer to peace. It brings me closer to freedom. It dispels it a little bit more. It brings me closer, closer, closer to that. And so, thank you for your learning. Thank you for your good application with that very difficult lesson. You've saved me time. You've saved all of us time in doing that very difficult application work for all these years. Really, I'm so grateful. You've helped me so much. So, thank you. I love you. All right, you guys. Beautiful. Okay. So now we're going to do the integration meditation, and where we apply the ideas for a couple of minutes. Beautiful. All right, so close your eyes and take a breath, and we are going to use these ideas. Beautiful. So now I want you first to just notice, I just want you to just feel within, see how you feel within. How do you feel within yourself? Having heard these ideas, and having heard these ideas in a healing circle with other mighty companions who also want to be liberated by the truth. And just breathe in that feeling, breathe in that feeling. And now I want you to bring to your awareness something, some problem, something that you've been struggling with, something that feels where the perception of pain seems real. I want you to bring that to your awareness. Bring that to your awareness. And now we are going to look at it without fear. We're going to not look away. We're going to look at it and call upon knowledge of the truth, while we're looking directly at this problem. We're going to do the problem-solving approach of A Course in Miracles. Beautiful. Now, holding this perceived problem in your awareness, I want you to say to yourself, what I am looking at is fear and fear's effects. That's what I'm looking at here. That's what I'm looking at. And I'm learning that fear isn't real. All I'm looking at is fear, and I'm learning that fear isn't real. Fear isn't real, and neither are fear's effects. And take a breath. Beautiful. And now I want you to say over this problem, speak this truth over this problem. I want you to say, all power is of God, which is love, and what is not of God or love has no power to do anything. And then say to yourself, say to this problem isn't of God. It didn't come from God. This problem didn't come from God. And so this problem has no power to do anything to me, even if the problem seems to be death. So say to this problem, speak this truth over this problem. This problem did not come from love. It didn't come from God. And what didn't come from God has no power to do anything at all. And then take a breath. You're taking your power back. And just notice how it feels to speak the truth over the problem. Notice how the seeming reality of the problem begins to dissolve, and your fear around it begins to dissolve and be dispelled. And because this is the truth, it works, even if you don't believe it. And then let's just go ahead and ask our higher self, what is the truth about this problem? What is the truth about this problem, and what is the truth about me? And then listen. Thank you, God. Thank you, Spirit. And then when you're ready, take a deep breath. Bring your awareness back to the room. Open your eyes. You want to stretch. Wonderful. All right. I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for coming out to the Miracle Center. If you guys are in the Denver area, come on down to the Rocky Mountain Miracle Center. We got a class on this class Monday evening, 7 p.m. And also the Rocky Mountain Miracle Sunday service, 11 a.m. every Sunday. I'm doing the 11 a.m. Sunday service at the Rocky Mountain Miracle Center this coming Sunday. If you're looking to hear some Course in Miracles on Sunday, come on down. Rocky Mountain Miracle Center is 1939 South Monroe Street, Denver. I so appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time I see you.